Reading 4, I Met You in a Story, 2nd edition, Bob Jones University Press. Ingersoll by Gail Fitzgerald. Illustrated by Tim Davis and Noel Snyder. Pint-sized pig. Believe me, it certainly wasn't my idea. I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, an animal lover. And although I am sure that there is a purpose, I do wonder sometimes how I ever ended up in my family. You'll understand when I tell you more about them. My father grew up on a farm and is constantly talking about the good old days of horses, mules, chickens, and geese. My mother has 4 cages of birds on the sun porch, a turtle over the kitchen sink, and a little black mop named Fifi. My brother's bedroom is wall-to-wall horse posters, and he reads horse books every spare minute. He even makes models of horses and paints them. Then there's me, Harold J. Otis. The only way I like animals is on the table. Fried chicken, barbecued pork chops, and hamburgers. So you see, it could not have been my idea to welcome that pint-sized piglet into the house. It was more likely that one of my father's childhood memories got tangled up with reality the day we visited an old friend in the country. Yes, sirree! Mr. Elroy had nodded his balding head and scratched the little piglet he had under his arm. This little critter is the result of years of research and breeding. As an adult, she'll weigh only 120 pounds. Right then, we should have known. Who raises pigs to be small? The more bacon, the better, I always say. But I didn't. Instead, my mother gushed. Why, that's only the size of a large house dog. How nice. It would be fun to have a house pig. Yeah! My brother's eyes grew big. We could take her in the car on vacation with us. The thought of sharing the back seat of the car with the pig didn't excite me at all. Pigs belonged on the back of trucks headed for the market, not in the cars of respectable people. But my family wasn't thinking about respectability. "We'll take her," said Dad, with a note of finality ringing in his voice. I knew better than to argue with that. I stayed my distance during that ride home. I even managed to stay out of the way for the first couple of months that Ingersoll lived in our house. She stayed in her box in the garage, and I spent most of the time as far away as possible. But that fateful day finally came. Mom had gone to the store. Dad was at work, and my brother, of course, was at the library, getting another stack of horse books. That meant just Ingersoll and I were at home. Now I was minding my own business and hoping Ingersoll would do the same. But a series of high-pitched squeals from the garage told me that Ingersoll's business was about to become mine. I raced to the garage, wondering what calamity had set off such a racket. I nearly split my seams laughing when I saw what had happened. Ingersoll had turned her box, newspapers, dishes, and all, right over on herself. Now she was dashing around underneath the box, squealing like the frightened pig she was. The box crashed into a stack of flower pots, and then went scurrying through the wound-up garden hoses. After banging into the wall and knocking over some garden tools with a clatter, the box headed for my new bicycle. "Oh, no!" I choked on the laugh that had been in my throat. I knew then that Ingersoll and I could no longer keep our distance. I headed toward the bike, hoping to be in time to catch the box. I wasn't. Box, pig, papers, dishes, and I flew into the air. The bike crashed behind us. I grasped blindly for the pig and succeeded in grabbing his hind leg. Holding on tightly, I noticed how big the hind quarter had gotten. Almost big enough for pork chops, I thought. Then came the first time we took Ingersoll in the car with us. It was a disaster. She did not behave like the clean, intelligent, well-bred pig she was supposed to be. Instead, she got nervous and then frantic. She dashed from one back window to the other, pulling a big thread in my sweater and knocking my brother's book out of his hand. Mom became excited too. "Oh dear, I guess Ingersoll isn't a car pig." She leaned over the back seat and tried to calm her by patting her head. Meanwhile, Dad turned the car around, and we headed back home by the shortest and quickest route possible. "Do you think we ought to take Ingersoll to the vet to get her calmed down?" That came from my brother, who always talked about becoming a vet. I just rolled my eyes. Maybe riding in the front seat would have helped her. I wasn't going to suggest it, though. I still thought pigs belonged in pickup trucks. That was the first and last time Ingersoll rode in the car. It was also about that time that Dad had to start parking the car in the driveway instead of the garage. Ingersoll was getting just too big. Maybe we fed her too much. Or maybe the researchers were wrong. But Ingersoll soon left the 120-pound mark far behind. Secretly, I was glad. Sausage for breakfast. Dad built a run, like a dog run, for Ingersoll in the backyard. Proudly, he showed his finished project to Mom. "See, I chose the grassiest spot in the lawn." Mom clapped her hands. "Oh, good. Now Ingersoll won't get dirty. She's getting too big to bathe every day, you know." Evidently, Dad had never raised pigs. It didn't take Ingersoll more than a couple of hours to root up every blade of grass inside the fence. Ingersoll just kept growing and growing. She grunted and groaned, wallowing in her mud hole that now took up half the yard, but we all thought she was doing pretty well in her backyard home. Pig-sized problems. Then one night during dinner, Dad got a phone call. Later, the phone rang again, and Mom took the call. The neighbors had begun to complain. Apparently, they could hear Ingersoll grunting all the way down on Park Lane. We held a family council. I was about to suggest that maybe it was time to take Ingersoll for a visit to the butcher's when I noticed Mom dabbing her eyes. "She's such an affectionate animal," she said, folding up her tissue. "And she's so much smarter than the average family pet," Dad added. "I just don't know how we can keep her from grunting so much." "Maybe she's bored," my brother chimed in. We looked at him questioningly. "You know, sometimes smart kids get bored in school, and then they cause trouble." "So you think Ingersoll needs some additional activities?" I asked. Dad snapped his fingers. "That's it! Ingersoll needs to be taken for walks to see the countryside." It sounded like a simple solution, Dad would walk Ingersoll before breakfast. Mom would take her turn at lunchtime. I would have the privilege after school, and my brother's turn came after dinner. Dad was the first to try the exercise routine. He arrived home from work with an extra-large dog collar and leash. Before breakfast the next day, he headed out into the frosty air with Ingersoll. All went well until he got down to Park Lane. Just as he was rounding the bend, walking briskly to keep up with our eager pet, he met a group of early morning joggers. Dad is usually a pretty friendly fellow, but that morning he tried to avoid looking at the men approaching. Ingersoll, however, was feeling much more friendly. She took off running in their direction, with Dad clutching the leash tightly and trying to keep up with the friendly pig. Still trying to avoid looking at the joggers, Dad tripped, let go of the leash, and watched helplessly as Ingersoll headed across the field toward home. When Dad arrived back at the house, Ingersoll was waiting for her breakfast in the garage. I don't know who the joggers were, or what they said to my dad, but he refused to walk Ingersoll after that. Then my brother suddenly came down with an overload of homework. He said he couldn't possibly spare time to walk the pig. Mom tried to keep her part of the agreement. For several days, Ingersoll was content to wait while Mom stopped to look at wildflowers or listen to bird calls. Then one day, Mom decided to give Fifi a walk at the same time. Fifi isn't used to a leash, but Mom ventured down the lane with a leash in each hand. I don't know who saw the rabbit first, Ingersoll or Fifi, but those two animals must have taken off on some run. Mom is certainly no runner, but you have to give her credit. She never did let go of the leashes. I helped get the burrs out of Fifi's fur and clean the mud off Mom's tennis shoes. But needless to say, that was the last time Mom got involved in Ingersoll's exercise program. Guess who was left to do the walking? So I walked her and tried not to complain. At least, I reasoned, it gave me a chance to get out in the fresh air. I even got to where I enjoyed it sometimes. And Ingersoll got larger and larger. The official-looking letter was in the mailbox when I came up the drive with Ingersoll one late afternoon. As I closed the garage door on the big gal, she looked up from her dinner long enough to grunt what sounded almost like a thank you. I reminded myself that no pig would ever show any sign of gratitude. Mom opened the letter and started reading it while she made supper. Then Mom dropped her spoon right into the gravy. "Oh, honey," she cried, waving the letter toward Dad. "They say we have to get rid of Ingersoll. Something about zoning." "What?" cried my brother. "Now what are we going to do?" Several months ago, I could have told them exactly what to do with an oversized hog. Now I started to say something, but found a strange lump forming in my throat. I wiped a tear on my shirt sleeve, hoping no one noticed. What was I crying for? I certainly was not an animal lover. But somehow, to think of Ingersoll on the table was just plain, well, unthinkable. "Don't worry, dear," Dad patted Mom on the arm. "I'll call Mr. Elroy. I think he'll be glad to see what has become of his experimental pig. Surely he'll be willing to come with his pickup truck." So that's what we did. And that's what happened. Life in the Otis household returned to normal. The backyard is nearly all green again. But we have reminders of the Ingersoll days. My bike still has a dented fender, and I couldn't bring myself to get Mom to fix that pole in my sweater. Some of the horse posters in my brother's room have been replaced by pictures of prize pigs. And we never eat bacon anymore. Last week we visited Mr. Elroy. He had called Dad to tell us there was something special to see. Mr. Elroy nodded his balding head and scratched a little piglet he held under his arm. Nearby, Ingersoll sprawled happily with the other 8 piglets in her first family. "We can't take her," said Dad with a note of finality ringing in his voice. I knew better than to argue with that.